Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, the motion in front of the committee is not one that I can support. In Clause C, the motion reads that the committee supports the recognition of a viable and independent state of Palestine. That part of the motion has no conditions on the recognition of a viable and independent state of Palestine and implies that the committee supports the immediate recognition of a Palestinian state. And this is a radical position in our view. It changes Canada's long-standing position that the recognition of a Palestinian state can only be achieved at the end of a negotiated agreement between the two parties, the Israelis and the Palestinians. This is a long-standing position of the Government of Canada for many, many years. It has been the long-standing position of previous Liberal governments, of previous Conservative governments, and this motion would be a departure from that long-standing and cogent position. The motion, as it's currently worded, would also isolate us from our closest and traditional allies. We would be isolated in the G7, which is arguably our most important multilateral membership. We would become the first national legislature of a G7 member to encourage the government to immediately and forthwith recognize a state of Palestine, or at very least recognize a state of Palestine before a negotiated agreement had been concluded between the Israelis and Palestinians. And this would isolate us from the rest of the members in the G7. It also would isolate us from our traditional and closest allies within the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Canada would become the first major and founding member of NATO to have taken a position in its national legislature and arguably encouraged the Government of Canada to do the same, to recognize a state of Palestine before the two parties in this long-standing conflict had come to a negotiated settlement. And I want to, Mr. Chair, make the argument why Canada, across previous Liberal and Conservative governments, and why our closest allies within the G7 and NATO have held to this position for many, many years. The reason for this long-standing position is that people have rightfully concluded that the only way to a long-standing and durable peace can only be achieved through a negotiated settlement between the two parties, between the Israelis and the Palestinians. And that anything unilateral on part of one party or the other is inherently the opposite of a negotiated settlement between the two parties. And that is the reason for this long-standing position of the Parliament of Canada, of this committee in its majority, of the Government of Canada, and of our closest and traditional allies. That is the logic of why we have adhered to that position for so many years. Now, since the events of October 7th last year, it seems farther away than ever that we could achieve a negotiated settlement. But nevertheless, we must keep that as our objective. And to veer from that path, in my view, in the context of what's happened since October 7th of last year, would only award violence and authoritarianism as a path to achieving statehood. Mr. Chair, I believe that what is going on in the Middle East, what is going on is similar to what is going on in Eastern Europe, similar to what is going on in the South China Sea, and similar to what is going on in many parts of sub-Saharan Africa. And that is a clash between democracies, however flawed, like Israel, like Ukraine, like Taiwan, and authoritarian states, like the Russian Federation, the People's Republic of China, North Korea, and the Islamic Republic of Iran. And in that clash, there is no question on which side of the line Canada should stand on. Out of the some 190 member states of the United Nations, there are only 2 or 3 dozen democracies. And so the argument that 140 member states of the UN have already recognized a state of Palestine is not a cogent argument, because the vast majority of those member states are not in any way, shape, or form democratic states that believe in the trinity of the rule of law, of democracy and democratic institutions, and of human rights and freedoms. And I would add, Mr. Chair, that of the democracies that have recognized the state of Palestine, they are not long-standing democracies. They were not, many of them were not on our side during the blood that was shed during much of the 20th century in defense of democracy, during the Second World War, from 1939 to 1945, when 40,000 Canadians gave their lives in defense of democratic ideals, and many tens of thousands more were brutally wounded, either physically or mentally. The democracies that participated in that fight from 1939 to 1945, Canada included, fought for these democratic ideals, and in the aftermath of 1945, created the rules-based international order that has ensured our relative peace and security relative to the previous centuries for the last almost 80 years. And so we must stand with our fellow democracies that fought that fight. And that's why we need to adhere to this long-standing position. Canada, Mr. Chair, is a Western liberal democracy, a long-standing Western liberal democracy. And so, Mr. Chair, what I would like to do now is to present an amendment to the motion, which I believe the clerk has copies of, which I would like to read into the record. We intend to speak to the amendment, Mr. Chair, and I hope that members of the committee will support the amendment. So, Mr. Chair, I move that the motion be amended by adding to Clause B the following.
Mr. Chair, while we're waiting, could I raise a point of privilege? Would that be all right, Michael? While we wait for that to be shared?
Sure.
So what I would like to raise with this committee, and I would like to ask your support from, Mr. Chair, last week's meeting was an in-camera meeting, and information from that meeting was leaked to the media. And that goes against all the rules that I think everybody in this room understands very well. The fact that it was leaked is, in fact, something that harms this committee's ability to do our work, and it is a point of privilege that was taken from us, that the right of us to be able to speak in camera without leaks was not granted to members of this committee. So I would ask that you, Mr. Chair, investigate how such a leak could have happened. I'd like you to report back to the committee, and I would like the committee to share that information with the House. Thank you.
You would like to speak to the point of privilege? I just need to clarify this. I completely agree with you. It was regrettable that we all had the opportunity to see.
With all due respect, it was more than regrettable. It was illegal.
If you will allow me, but I'm not quite sure how you're proposing I investigate this. If you could just elaborate on that, I'd be...
Well, I think to start with, you could have a conversation with those who are in the room. I think you could have a conversation with all the different parties and see whether or not there is any willingness to come clean from members of this committee. I think you could talk to the journalists that reported on this story. I think there are a number of things that I think you should undertake. And certainly, I think it is important that you make it extraordinarily clear to this committee that it is not unfortunate, that it is against the rules of this committee, that it harms all of us, even those who leaked that information. It harms all of us when we can't trust that other parties are not going to go to the media. So I would certainly like you to say something publicly to admonish the behavior that has led to this leak.
Thank you. I'll take all of that under advisement. Mr. Chong.
Mr. Chair, I support Madam McPherson's proposal. What I would suggest, Mr. Chair, is that you direct the analysts to prepare a draft report for the committee that states which members of the public, including members of the media, had knowledge about our in-camera proceedings, and that the committee consider that report, that draft report, at some future meeting when the analysts have so prepared that report.
So thank you for that. As the clerk has explained, I agree that that this is a question of privilege, that it's a very serious matter, and that we should do everything possible to get to the bottom of this. But as to how we want to proceed with this, as you know, we need a motion. We can't.
I move.
Point of order on a point of privilege. You can't make a motion on a response to a point of privilege. We have to be in.
Clerk advised me.
Yes. So, however, we can have a conversation about this, and the chair could come up with a suggestion as opposed to doing a motion, because I'd like to have some consideration about this. I would like to respond to the point of privilege, and I'm on a point of order. So I'm in a difficult situation because I think the point of privilege is really well taken. But on the issue of that point of privilege, we have a range of options, including reporting this to the House and having the Speaker deal with it. This is a hugely serious issue. I am in total agreement with Ms. McPherson, because we can't do our work if we can't trust each other. And so there are a variety of ways, and there are precedents on this. So maybe in response to Ms. McPherson, it would be helpful if the chair asked the clerk, not the analyst really, the clerk to prepare an outline of what our options are in the case of Ms. McPherson, and I believe all of ours, a breach of privilege.
Absolutely. We'll certainly do so. Yes, Mr. Bergeron.
What we are facing right now is a very concerning situation, which requires that it has to be followed up on. There has to be a consequence. Since last week, I've been wondering myself what follow-up there should be. And Ms. McPherson has, in a very timely fashion, brought up this question of privilege. I myself wonder if there are precedents for this type of situation where the members of a committee have broken the in-camera discussion, have spoken about it publicly to a journalist generally, and you must understand, of course, why journalists most often do not want to reveal their sources. But Mr. Oliphant's proposal is to ask the clerk to give us an outline of what can be the various options for us to respond to that, because we cannot be silent. We cannot pretend it never happened. It is too serious for us to continue business as usual and say, oh, well, nothing happened. We don't need to mention it. But what was broken here was the in-camera confidentiality of this committee. I'd like to have some options. I've been asking myself about this issue and wondering what the options were since last week. We have to do something about it, and that goes without saying.
All your points are very well taken. We will ask the clerk to prepare a menu of options, if you will, and then we will revisit this issue if necessary to make sure that we've accommodated everyone's perspective and we can get to the bottom of this. Yes, Mr.
I would get the clerk's advice on this, however, because I believe what happens on a point of privilege is it's not a range of options for us. It's the chair rules on the point of privilege based on
I already have.
based
is
on the
correct.
advice of the clerk on your options, and you present to us the options and then your decision, and then we take that. It's not really, I believe, a committee choice to respond to a point of privilege. I think it's yours. And I would just think it's probably best to say, as the Speaker does in the House, I will consult the clerk, I will get the best advice and come back to the committee to respond to it. I think that's better than us trying to do a motion, but the clerk could help us with that.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in terms of procedure, how this works at the committee level on a question or a matter of privilege is that it can be raised at the earliest opportunity in a meeting, and then the chair will rule whether or not the chair believes it does relate to privilege or not. If the chair rules that it does relate to privilege, and the committee has the option to move a motion to report to the House on the breach of privilege in committee, and then the House can take further steps at that point. So that's one of the options. Otherwise, the committee could discuss the matter and then choose not to report the matter to the House. So those are the options, whether to report the matter of privilege to the House or not.
Mr. Bergeron.
À moins de faire erreur,
Unless I'm wrong, clerk, I didn't hear our chair say that it was a question of privilege. And consequently, if I understand what you have just said, we have the option of reporting back to the House about what was just said, or not to do so, but just debate amongst ourselves. Am I understanding you correctly?
Sure.
Oui, merci pour la question, Monsieur.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Monsieur Bergeron, for your question. We can report to the House about this situation in a detailed report, not necessarily allegations, but outlining what the issue is and asking the House to consider measures. In that instance, it would be up to the House to decide if there would be supplementary steps to be taken, or the committee could just decide amongst itself to discuss and come up with a committee decision in committee.
I'd like to say, and hopefully we can close this for the time being, is this, yes, I did rule on it. Secondly, as you will recall, I did turn to Madam McPherson and ask her as to what she thought needed to be done, because this is a very serious matter. Then Mr. Oliphant actually said we should ask the clerk to provide us with some options. Now, Mr. Oliphant says that, no, that's not the way to go. So if everyone could remember their own remarks, those were your specific remarks, Mr. Oliphant. You said go to the clerk and canvass all the options that are available, and now you're saying, no, that's not the way to deal with it. So if everyone can just remember that this is a very, very serious issue, and I would much rather actually report back to the members to ensure that everyone does have full confidence that we've taken it as seriously as we should. That is what I will do before advising the Speaker. But as was pointed out, we will wait for the clerk to actually set out what all those options are to the extent possible, and then we'll take it from there. Now we will go back to Mr.
Point of order.
Yes.
Just to clarify what I said, or tried to say, maybe misspoke, is I believe the chair should get all the options from the clerk. This is the chair's prerogative, and then report back to us your understanding of it, because I usually think it's a good idea to get all the precedents, all of those things, and then come back to us. I just think that's hard to do it in this meeting at this time, and I think that the clerk can help you on that.
Thank you, Mr. Oliphant.
There really is only one option, which is to report to the
Sure,
House.
that's fine. If we could just-
Yeah, I have more information here as to what the motion and the report.
That the only option, and this is very different than what Madam McPherson originally had in mind. She was of the opinion that I can get to the bottom of this. I should contact the journalist, but that is not possible. I'm advised that the only option is for me to inform the speaker. Yes, Ms. McPherson.
Then I would request you do so, if that's the only option we have on the
Sure.
table.
Fair enough.
That's done by way of
So
a motion.
I will certainly do so.
That's done by way of a motion of the committee.
Sorry?
That's done by way of a motion of the committee.
By way of motion of the committee, yes.
So if there is a motion to do so,
So we will draft something and then bring it back
It's-
for the approval of the members.
I'm happy to move a motion right now.
Just to make sure, because I'm sure there are several different options, but we'll definitely look into this, put it at the top of our priorities for the next meeting. Mr. Chong.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Continuing a debate on the motion in front of the committee regarding the State of Israel and the Palestinian people, I propose the following amendment. I believe, Mr. Chair, that all members of the committee should now have that amendment.
Well, they got an email. There's an email sent out.
Is there?
Is everyone satisfied? They have,
yeah.
either
Got the
access
email.
to their email. Yep.
I move that B be amended by adding the following words, quote, and defend itself, end quote. That C be amended by adding the following words, quote, which is the result of a negotiated agreement between Israelis and Palestinians, end quote. That D be amended by replacing the numeral 6 with the numeral 4, and that the following words be struck, quote, the recognition of the state of Palestine within, end quote. Mr. Chair, that is my amendment. I'll just briefly speak to it before allowing other members to voice their views on it. I believe that the amendment adheres to the long-standing, would amend the motion so that the motion adheres to the long-standing position of governments of various stripes and the long-standing position of
Point of order. I'm sorry, Michael. We have two different written versions of the amendment. I've got one which has changed to Clause B here with 3 extra words added to it, and I've got one without changes to Clause B. So I've got two different written versions, and I really need clarity on that about how we got two versions and which version we were supposed to be looking at.
It's the version that I read into the record, Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry, I was waiting on my point of order for the written version because it was going quickly in the verbal version, so now I'm confused.
Mr. Chair, it's the
So if I
version.
could ask that you read it one more time, just so
Yes,
there's
I will.
no confusion.
Agreed, Mr. Chair. It's the version I read into the record for Mr. Oliphant's clarification, and I will reread the amendment.
Thank you.
I move that Clause B be amended by adding the words, quote, and defend itself, end quote. That Clause C be amended by adding the words, quote, which is the result of a negotiated agreement between Israelis and Palestinians, end quote. That Clause D be amended by replacing the numeral 6 with the numeral 4, and by striking the words, quote, the recognition of a state of Palestine within, end quote. Mr. Chair, that is the amendment I move. I'll briefly speak to it. Mr. Chair, I'm moving this amendment because it would amend the motion to ensure that the committee adheres in clauses A, B, and C to the long-standing position of the two major parties in the House of Commons, that adheres to the long-standing, which also happens to be the long-standing position of the Government of Canada through previous Conservative and Liberal governments. I think it also would ensure coherence in our position, but also indicate to the Government of Canada a coherent path forward for the events taking place in the Middle East. And that coherence rests on one fundamental assumption that I believe is the case, which is that there can be no lasting and durable peace in the Middle East without a negotiated agreement, a negotiated settlement between the two parties to this conflict, the Israelis and the Palestinians, and that anything unilateral on part of one party or the other takes us further away from that lasting and durable peace, takes us further away from putting pressure on both parties to sit down at the table, to negotiate and compromise and come to a two-party agreement. And that is the reason, Mr. Chair, for our amendment to the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chong. We have two. No, but we're now discussing the amendment. Yeah, so do we not go to a different list for the discussion of the amendment? Sorry?
It's the same list.
Okay, so revert back to. But you don't think those are two different lists? No? Just one? No, I just wanted to clarify.
I would say, well, Ms. McPherson was clear that she wanted to speak to the amendment.
Yeah, but these two individuals also indicated they want to speak to it,
Fair enough.
right?
Yeah.
So don't you think we're better off doing another list for the amendment?
It's not my decision to make.
What is your recommendation?
My recommendation is that we continue with the same speaking list. And
Okay. So we next go to Mr. Abeltaif.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to actually speak.
I don't think so either.
I was going to actually speak to the point of privilege over the leak that happened to the media. We received emails from the media. They seem to know every single detail about what went into the meeting. That's not acceptable. That's definitely illegal. And I thought that's a very serious issue. As far as the rest of the time, Mr. Chong have spoken, and that would be the end of my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker up is Mr. Oliphant.
Fortification. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I will speak to the amendment, but since I haven't had a chance to speak to the motion, I want to refer to both of them through my conversation. It won't take too long. I think it's any conversation on this subject is going to be difficult. There are G7 parliaments as well as parliaments around the world discussing this conversation, and I think we should, as parliamentarians, have a robust conversation about the issues in the Middle East at this time. I always begin this conversation by talking about the heinous attack which happened on October 7th, which was the largest attack on Israel and Israeli people, and really the Jewish population of the world by the terrorist organization Hamas. We will be approaching the first anniversary of that very soon, and it has to be emblazoned in our minds and our memories as something which continues as hostages still have not been released and as that war continues. At the very same time, we are cognizant of the huge civilian casualties that have happened in Gaza, as well as, frankly, in the West Bank in recent weeks. But the large toll is on some more than 40,000 people in Gaza who have lost their lives, including some 17,000 children. And we recognize that Canada is one of the leading nations in calling for a ceasefire. we took a little time on that, I will say, as many countries did, because we also recognize Israel's right to defend itself from a terrorist attack. But the Prime Minister, and as the head of the government, has been very clear that there needs to be a negotiated ceasefire, that hostages need to be returned, and both sides need to lay down their arms, and that should happen immediately. And so there have been a variety of peace proposals that have happened. Canada continues to work with a number of partners on those proposals, but we are extremely concerned about the loss of civilian lives, which continue. We do put responsibility on Hamas as the instigator of this conflict. We also put a responsibility on Israel to follow the rules of law, the rule of law with respect to war. And so we have been also very clear about that these are complex and complicated interwoven issues that the government has been attempting to provide really assistance in world fora on this, and we'll continue to do that. While we are calling for an immediate ceasefire and the laying down of arms by both parties, the release of hostages by Hamas, and the delivery of humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza, we also have in our sights a two-state solution. That is firmly embedded in our government's policy, and I fear that it is waning in some people's minds, that the events of October 7th have actually derailed other people's commitment to a two-state solution. Canada remains firmly in favor of a two-state solution and in taking the steps to ensure a two-state solution. If we are to have a two-state solution, Mr. Chair, we need two states. That is very clear. Canada is a friend and ally of the state of Israel. We've been a friend to the Palestinian people. However, our Prime Minister has been very clear that the recognition of the state of Palestine is to be done at the right time, not necessarily as the last step in the path. Let me just say that again. Canada, the government of Canada, is prepared to recognize the state of Palestine at the right time, not necessarily as the last step along the path. He also went on to say, we urgently need to build a credible path towards lasting peace. We oppose efforts by the Netanyahu government to reject a two-state solution. At the same time, Hamas, a terrorist group, currently controls areas in Gaza and has not laid down its arms or released its hostages. That is the reality of the situation. The reason that we will continue to support the motion that was made is because we believe the best place to give government advice on those conditions for the right time, for the recognition of the state of Palestine, can happen in this committee. This is a forum where we can bring experts, academics, NGOs, international NGOs, Canadians from a variety of opinions and backgrounds to find a way we can advise the government as parliamentarians as to the conditions and the timing which will bring a lasting peace, a peace with justice. This is something many of us have been committed to for decades. There is a huge possibility that this can happen at this in the very near future. There's also a chance it can be completely derailed for generations. So I think it's incumbent upon this committee to very seriously look at this issue, to recognize we're not of all the same opinion on this committee. There's a variety of opinions. There's probably a spectrum. In our House of Commons, we're not all of the same opinion. In the country as a whole, we're not all of the same opinion. What better place than Parliament, and more specifically, this committee, to have that discussion on the recognition of the state of Palestine? It goes without saying that we hold in our hearts and in our minds the people of Israel who have for generations, for millennia, faced hatred and anti-Semitism and horrendous loss of life for generations. And Israel is their homeland and safe haven and place that we need to defend and protect. No question about it. But people take up space. My very first trip to Israel, what I learned was people take up space. We have two peoples living on a small piece of land, and we need to find a way for the two of them to not just coexist, but thrive together. That the safety and security of Israel is dependent upon the safety and security of Palestine, and they go hand in hand. That means we believe in the two-state solution. That means you need two states to do it. The question for this committee, which we believe is well expressed in the motion, is let us study that without presupposing, and we read the motion differently. I understand that. I've heard the opposition. We read the motion differently. We are not presupposing the timing of the recognition, but we are presupposing the recognition because we have presupposed the two-state solution. That's how we're reading it. We are committed to that. We want to work with this committee. It'll be an uncomfortable set of hearings. We'll have people bringing their pain, bringing their differences, bringing their anxieties and their worries and their fears on both sides, or maybe more than two sides. That is what we need to do. I want to close by saying we are on the verge of this becoming a regional conflict. So we have to find a way to de-escalate. I speak particularly about the Israel-Lebanon border and South Lebanon and attacks which are taking place both in Israel from Hezbollah, a terrorist organization, and in Lebanon, which have killed civilians. That has to stop. We also recognize the role of Iran in this. We recognize that the Arab states are trying to find a way to broker peace. The United States is trying to do that. Canada is playing its role. The Palestinian Authority is attempting to play its role. We will continue to do that. I will just close by saying this is the place for us to have this discussion, and it shouldn't wait. So that's why we will be supporting the motion and continue to defend it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chair. I elevated you.
But you didn't really speak to the amendments, did you?
We will be supporting the motion as it was presented, which then is tacitly that we don't want to entertain motions, the amendments, because we will be getting into issues that we think should be debated in the study. So the issues that are there around the negotiated settlement, around all of those things, and of course we believe in Israel and its statehood, so we're not going to go there. We believe that the motion can stand to get us into the study and put us into a difficult study. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. We'll disagree. We'll have disagreement on our own side. We'll have disagreement on other sides. I believe that. But the world needs the Canadian Parliament to advise the Canadian government on the timing and conditions that we think will be best suited for a lasting and just peace. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I propose that we suspend for a couple of minutes just to allow everyone to read this amendment, have any chats that they want to have? Because, no? Okay. Madam McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So many things I want to mention, but to start with, I just want to say that I think, as the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Government of Canada, the Parliament of Canada, that it is very important that we acknowledge what happened in Lebanon yesterday. It was the most deadly day for Lebanese since 2006. Over 1,000 people were injured. Many, many civilians, including multiple children, lost their lives yesterday. And I have heard from Lebanese Canadians from coast to coast who are heartbroken, who are afraid, who are terrified for their loved ones and their family members, and I want to acknowledge that fear is real. I also agree with my colleagues. What happened on October 7th was horrific. I am a mother. My children are the same age as those children that went to a music festival. That's something that every everyone should have the opportunity to do. And the terrorist attack that took place on October 7th is appalling. And I have been very clear from the very beginning how horrific that was, and how we grieve with all of those who lost a loved one, and how we continue to grieve for those who are waiting for their loved ones to come home. But I have to tell you that right now, what is being put forward is unsupportable. You know, we listen to the government say when the time is right, we'll recognize Palestine. I'm here to tell you the time is right. The time has been right for a very long time. But we have seen for the last 11 months the death of children, the targeting of civilians, the breaking of international and humanitarian law, the attacks on media, the attacks on humanitarian workers. It's unconscionable that there is a person in our parliament that isn't saying right now, this is the time, this is the right time. Because what has happened over the last 11 months has not made it one iota safer for anyone in Palestine or Israel. Not one iota safer. It has made it more dangerous, more difficult, and more of a struggle for all of the people living in the region. You know, Mr. Chong talked about the fact that we shouldn't acknowledge the state of Palestine because the G7 has not done that. I would like to point out Canada used to have bravery. We used to have the bravery to stand aside from whatever position the United States was taking. I think about Brian Mulroney in South Africa. Yes. I think about other times where we were the architects of the international justice systems, the international criminal courts. And now the government's not sure they're going to support them? Come on. I'm going to support this motion as it was written by the Liberals, not because I think it is a great motion. I'm going to support it because I think people in this room need to hear from Palestinians. And I think there are people in this room who have never listened to the voices of Palestinians. So I will support this motion, but be very clear. Not a single one of these things requires a study. The minister could do this today. The minister could sanction Netanyahu, Ben-Gvir, and Smotrich today. The minister could stop arms loopholes going to the United States today, and the minister could recognize the state of Palestine today. We do not need a study. We do not need to be doing this work. This could happen today. Thank you.
Mr. Bergeron.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Chair. As you can see, this is a debate that is a passionate debate, a debate that will give rise to a difference of opinions, but it is a necessary debate. It is a necessary debate that we, as a Foreign Affairs Committee, should have had some months ago. We should have looked at what is presently happening currently in the Middle East. But it was chosen, another choice was made. We chose not to do so. We had briefings on world affairs, but we chose not to do so. And to avoid difficult debates, perhaps it was done that just to carry on with our agenda, but it was not the right thing to do, to close our eyes to what is happening there. I think now about the attack on Israel, its pushback, and now the attack on Lebanon and the effects on international law. I will go point by point over the parts of the motion that has been brought up by Mr. Chong. I have to say I'm going to vote against it, not because there isn't interesting matter in the motion, but because there are some things that seem unacceptable for me. Point B supports Israel's right to exist and defend itself. From the very minute after the savage, heinous attack by Hamas on Israel, we spoke out against it. And we urged Israel to defend itself. And members of the international community did that through respecting humanitarian international law. But there is no respect of humanitarian international law in the way in which Israel has been defending itself against that evil, at least to date. We saw from the outset that we were able to add what we had to add: the respect of human rights, international human rights, and we could have added the right to defend itself, that is, Israel's right to defend itself against the occupation. But Mr. Chung spoke about the Second World War. People who supported the recognition of Palestine would not be in the same camp as Canada. That is a statement that really took me by surprise. I was shaken by it because with respect to Spain, how can you speak in that way thinking of Norway? How can you say something like that when you think of Slovenia, that was part of the German occupation during World War II? How can you say such a thing when Canada recognized the right to defend oneself against aggression, against occupation? At that time it did. But now Canada is silent with respect to aggression, occupation, and what has been happening since '67 in Palestine. We could have said that in the motion, that there is another side. There are illegal colonies, homesteaders that are there. It could have been in this. And now at point C, when we speak to recognizing Palestine, which is the result of a negotiated agreement between Israelis and Palestinians. The United States, when you think about the former British protectorate that at the time worked with the United States, but now there's only one of the two states that was recognized at the time. The other is recognized by a large community, a large part of the international community, but there is a hesitancy to recognize the existence of Palestine, what we used to call third world countries, developing countries, no matter what type of qualifier you want to use to describe them, can refer to Palestine. There are more and more industrialized countries using that type of terminology. Norway, Spain, and Ireland. I'm sure Mr. Chung would not say that Ireland was on the other side during World War II. There are many countries that are moving towards that. What is Canada waiting for to do so, to do the same thing? Show some courage. Show some forward-looking. Canada stood up, given the situation in South Africa when there was a conservative government at the time. Is there a lack of courage today? Is there a reason why we do not recognize the policy of Palestine? Is there some reason for that? And I hear the argument that says that if we want to recognize Palestine, it would be saying Hamas was okay when it committed its heinous acts on October the 7th. Well, yes, they were heinous, but just look at the activities against the British at the time. You might forget the fact. You might forget that today's people, Palestinians, maybe not the population itself, but that there has been in the past terrorist activities carried out against the British of the day to establish Palestine. Look, I'm not speaking in favor of terrorism. Understand me clearly. They have been ignoble, unacceptable, unqualifiable acts carried out against all civilian populations. To my mind, that is intolerable. It's terrorists, but sometimes it is the states themselves that deliberately attack, that lend themselves to these savage attacks against the civilian population. You have Gaza. You have the West Bank. And if that continues, what will happen? Will we continue not to recognize and just wait until there are structured negotiations that will allow at some point in the future Palestine, the conclusion of a peace agreement that will be to the profit of both both Palestinians and Israelis? It's already been done. But there is an imbalance in the relations of strength because there is a state that is internationally recognized that benefits from the support of many powerful nations in the world. And then you have the other state that lives and has lived since 1967 under an illegal occupation in poverty. And slowly its territory has been eaten up by others. Is that going to continue on for decades? Or will there be some show of courage, some show of audacity to bring the parties together, to sit down to the bargaining table, to negotiate, and to establish once and for all peace? It is impossible for these two peoples to live in a permanent state of war. But they have been doing so since the UN resolution, the original one that created the two states, but was not respected. Many states wonder why it wasn't implemented. But it is this spirit of two states. And as Mr. Oliphant said, for there to be two states, there have to be two states that can sit down at the table together, not one state and a country under occupation. And that's what the present situation is. That's the current situation. A country, a nation, and another that lives under occupation. One nation eating away at the territory of the other. It was denounced during World War II, after World War II. People were encouraged. But there is now silence. Where is Canada's audacity? Where is Canada's courage that Mr. Chong spoke to, that was so well demonstrated during World War II by Canadians? We want to find it again. I fear, and I'm going to say this, I hope this is not just a red herring that is being put here on the table to sort of get around the underlying issue. To have at least 6 meetings, but it's being reduced to 4. You know that this parliament we are living in now is under enormous pressure. It's a minority government. It's a government that's hanging on by a thread, I might say. And are we going to have only 4 meetings on the future of Palestine? I said last week there should be 4 meetings. For my mind, it should be at most 4 meetings. But, you know, there have to be meetings, and it has to come about. So I have to say that I deeply regret that I'm going to have to vote against this amendment, this motion. I will support the original motion. What are we trying to do? Just to save the face of the minister? Are just giving more time to the minister so the minister can continue negotiations? And we, as a committee, I say, should be able to act. We are choosing not to do so by having this motion brought forward. I don't like the way the government is proceeding at this time, but it's better than nothing. And for that reason, I will support the original motion.
We now go to MP Zuberi.
I'd like to cede my time, and I'll contribute after we vote on this amendment. I'd like us to vote on this amendment.
Okay. Mr. Abel Taif. Yes.
The time to Mr. Chong.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just briefly, we support a two-state solution, but we strongly believe, based on logic, that that two-state solution can only be arrived at as a result of a negotiation between the two parties, the Israelis and the Palestinians, that arrives at an agreement that has popular support and legitimacy amongst Israelis and Palestinians. The Prime Minister has indicated, as the Parliamentary Secretary has said, that his government would consider recognizing a Palestinian state at the right time, but not necessarily at the last step along the path. Mr. Chair, the risk in that statement is that the government is considering the recognition of a Palestinian state sooner rather than later. And the committee, by adopting the motion as it was originally worded, risks encouraging the Government of Canada to do the same. And the reason why we are opposed to that is, as I said before, that a two-state solution cannot only be the result of a declaration of Palestinian statehood, but rather the result of an agreement negotiated between the two parties. Just as a democracy cannot come into existence simply because of a declaration or simply because of the conduct of a single election. A democracy is the result not only of an election or of the adoption of a constitutional order, but also must be the result of democratic institutions and democratic checks and balances on power that are ongoing, that are daily, and that have popular support and popular legitimacy. That is how democracies come about. It's a long, arduous process, as we see in history, and that's the same thing with achieving statehood. It cannot simply be the result of a declaration. It must come about as a result of a difficult process of negotiation between the two parties involved in this conflict. And so that is the reason, Mr. Chair, I presented this amendment and why we cannot support the main motion if it is not amended.
Thank you. Next, go to MP McPherson.
Very quick, Mr. Chair. The only thing I will just follow up on Mr. Chong's comments is that the state of Palestine exists. It already exists. What we are talking here is the recognition from the Canadian government of that state. And for him to bring forward the argument that there needs to be an agreement by Israel for Palestine to exist is actually factually incorrect. And in fact, when you have a partner like Israel right now saying that they will not negotiate, that can hardly be a rationale for us to move forward as a country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No one else is on the speaking list. Would we like to put this to a vote?
The vote is on the amendment?
Yes, on the amendment. I should underscore this is on the amendment. Thank you.
Mr. Olagabro?
No.
Mr. Oliphant?
No.
Madame Chatel?
No.
Mr. Zuberi?
No.
Dr. Fry?
No.
Mr. Chong?
Yes.
Mr. Hoback?
Yes.
Mr. Epp?
Yes.
Mr. Abultaif?
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron?
Non.
And Ms. McPherson?
No.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so 7 days and 4 yeas.
Thank you. So 7 days and 4 years. So we will now go back to the original motion. Yes.
In the original motion, they talked about 6 meetings. And I believe Mr. Bergeron had made an amendment to change it to 4 meetings. So where does that fit into the process? Because we've never debated that, nor have we passed that.
Mr. Bergeron would like to make a formal motion at this point.
Sure. So it currently is at 6 unless Mr. Bergeron would like to move a motion on that.
Je crois que nous nous étions.
Yes, I thought we had reached a friendly agreement amongst ourselves for an amendment that would say a maximum of 4 meetings. That's the way I remember it, and I hope everybody else does.
Actually, it says no less than.
Mr. Chair, as the mover of the motion, I accept this as a friendly amendment, so no less than 4 meetings.
He's saying no more than 4.
Or no more than 4.
It's not friendly.
Okay, well, I was hoping that it's no less than 4, and maybe that would be the compromise, because let's aim for 4, but if the committee agrees that we need more, then we can discuss it. But I think no less than 4 is a good compromise, Mr. Bergeron.
My proposal was a maximum of 4, at most 4.
Did you want to leave it or did you want to introduce an amendment?
Si ça ne
If it isn't a friendly amendment, I will make a formal amendment to amend the motion so that it will be a maximum of 4 meetings.
Vote? On division? Okay, so all those in favor?
Agree.
2. All, you guys agree or? Yeah. Okay. All those against? Okay. So adopted. So now we go back to the original motion and as amended. So we now go back to the original motion. Mr. Zuberi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm very happy and pleased that we are having this discussion in the open. This is an important discussion around something that's been on Canadians' minds for the last several months, if not years. With this Foreign Affairs Committee is tasked with studying matters that relate to what is happening on the global stage. Right now, what's happening in the Middle East is top of mind for not only Canadians, but people across the globe. And we, as so many had mentioned before, my colleagues from all parties, we mourn the loss of life, all life, that has happened since October, regardless of one's faith or ethnicity, one's background within the Middle East. We mourn the loss of life of everyone, every innocent person. Each and every life that has been taken unjustly, wrongly in this conflict is a tragedy, and that's why this committee must be seized by this issue. And I think of Vivian Silver, who dedicated her life to building peace for everyone in the region. She was Israeli, but was tragically killed on October 7th. But she dedicated her life to building a better future for everyone within the region. And I think that that is a spirit by which we need to approach this issue, this study, and the topic and the conversation of the Middle East. In my writing, I speak with people who are connected to the region in multiple ways. But one thing that always rings true is that everyone is feeling the same emotions, be it sadness, be it guilt, be it pain. So many different emotions people are feeling. The thing is that everyone is feeling the same thing. And it's important for us to recognize that. And it allows us also to remind ourselves while we're feeling this pain and this tragedy, this nightmare, seeing this nightmare unfold, that we remind ourselves firmly, and each and every one, I would say, at this committee, we have to be committed to peace. We have to be committed to building a better future for everyone within the region, regardless of faith or ethnicity. And I think that that should be top of mind as we enter this conversation, this vote, top of mind as we hopefully will be studying this into the future, and top of mind in each and every interaction we have with Canadians, with each other, with the subject matter. And I think it's important to remind ourselves about that because oftentimes we get caught up in our silos, right? And our silos are not going to help us build true peace in the Middle East. Our silos will maintain the status quo. And so this study that we have now in front of us, this motion, globally, talks about the Middle East. It is an opportunity for us at this committee to look at how we can build true peace in the region. It is a motion that recognizes the Canada's position, the common position we have across this table, no matter what side we're sitting on, of the two-state solution. A solution that, when realized, will be in everyone's best interests, regardless of which border one lives across, regardless of what ethnicity somebody happened to be born and had the good fortune to be born into. This is, I would suggest, a way in which we approach this. I ask and plead to committee members, while some may not feel that this motion is perfect, I ask you to support it and also to raise the points that you want to raise, to challenge the elements you want to challenge. And that's the whole work of Parliament and the debate that we have at Parliament. That's what this is about, the job that we do, what we signed up for when we put up posters and when we were elected. Our job is to debate, to discuss, and to make things manifest. And we will not all see the issue in the same way, eye to eye. But this endeavor, this process, with respect for each other, and while we might differ, with respect, this process will allow us to come to something better than each and every one of us around the table can come up with. So I'll conclude with that reminder that we approach this with this idea in mind, that we're here to bring true peace to the region in our small interactions, be it in our local ridings, or be it in Ottawa at the capital, be it in international fora, wherever we are. If that's what we as elected officials, as leaders, right, as teachers, should be doing. I look forward to us debating, discussing this, questioning the witnesses that will come forth, and helping to move the world in a better direction. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members for indulging.
Thank you. We next go to MPL Gabra.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, this is an important discussion, and there isn't a more fitting place to have this discussion than this committee. And as I have said before, there seems to be unanimous consensus that we support a two-state solution. So implicit in that definition is that there's a recognition for a Palestinian state, yet the idea and the dream of a Palestinian state in today's moment of time seems to be slipping away. And we are hearing from radical voices on both sides that is moving away from a two-state solution, that is publicly speaking out against a two-state solution. And I think that's dangerous. What is also risky is now the notion that we are in an environment where there's a zero-sum outcome. That if one talks about Israel's right to exist, some people will see as erasure of a Palestinian state. Or if somebody's talking about a recognition of a Palestinian state, that is a detriment to the state of Israel. That we need to find ourselves out of that discussion. We need peace-loving, rational voices to put an end to this zero-sum outcome, and in fact talk about how if we move in that direction, everyone will be in a better position to live in peace and dignity and prosperity. So we really, I encourage anybody who supports a two-state solution to support this motion. This motion does not presuppose the outcome of what a Palestinian state would look like. It does not reward extremists, as some of my colleagues have been saying. Extremists do not support the wording of this motion. We need rational people to stand by their words when they say they support a two-state solution and engage in this study. As my colleague said, we have different ideas of what that means. That's fine. Again, that's what I expect from an intelligent debate. That's what I expect from a rational conversation. But to claim that one supports a two-state solution, but that then the recognition of a two-state solution undermines peace is contradictory and does not make any sense to me. And by the way, almost all states that have been recognized in modern history have not been asked to go through the same conditions that we're asking the steps of the Palestinian state to go through. This motion marginalizes voices like Hamas, because Hamas is not asking for a two-state solution. This marginalizes extremist voices within Israel because those extremist voices are not asking for a two-state solution. This motion offers hope to peace-loving people, Palestinian people, Israeli people, Canadians, who want to see leadership by their representatives who say we're going to do everything we can to advance the cause of peace, to advance the real, tangible, viable two-state solution. We should hear from witnesses who can provide us with input, and then at the end of it, we'll provide advice to government. But I'm sorry, I think people who oppose this motion must ask themselves, are they against a two-state solution? Because this is what this motion talks about, a two-state solution. That is the centerpiece of this motion, and what we need to do is to ensure that Canada has a voice to advance that against the extremist voices who are pushing us away from peace and two-state solution where Israelis and Palestinians live side by side in peace and harmony. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, MP Alghabra. We next go to MP Chatel.
Thank you very much, Chair. There's a great deal of sorrow at this time in the Middle East, and that sorrow, that suffering, exists in our communities as well. So we must represent the voices of our communities and those people that we represent here at our committee. Also, Canadians can do much to shed light on the issue to advance the file and to move closer towards a durable peace, because the realization that peace in the Middle East will be achieved by a two-state outcome, side by side. If there is no sustainable peace in the Middle East, there will be no sustainable peace in the world. They don't live in a bubble there. And when we in Canada look at the daily suffering experienced by the Israelis, by the Palestinians, and here we are in Canada, we can't just stay out of it. And there is this notion of responsibility. We have a responsibility to speak, to dialogue, to seek to find a solution for sustainable, durable peace. Canada can't be outside of that. Our committee will meet, we will hear witnesses, and we will try to ascertain how Canada can be an ally with the international community to achieve or help you achieve sustainable peace in the Middle East. We have worked hard in a variety of conflicts elsewhere in the world. Why should it be different now? We have a credible voice. It's a voice that is at the very heart of our Canadian identity, that is, to promote peace in the world. And it is up to us as a committee to deal with the motion that was moved by my colleague, Mr. Alghabra. I want myself to know if we together will be able to shed some light at the very end of this very dark tunnel.
Next, go to MP Chong and then to MP Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to reiterate that we are strongly opposed to this motion. Conservatives believe that the only way to a durable and lasting peace is the creation of a two-state solution that is the result of negotiations arriving at an agreement between the two parties involved in this long-standing conflict. And the risk with the committee adopting the motion in front of us is that it risks encouraging the Government of Canada to do the same and to recognize a Palestinian state sooner rather than later. And this would hurt Canada's interests. Make no mistake about it. Canada is part of the G7. We are a founding member of NATO. And we are struggling in these memberships. It's clear over the last several years that we are not taken seriously in G7 capitals and not taken seriously at NATO headquarters in Brussels. We have very few hard assets in the region. We once had many assets in the region. We once were able to deploy missions to the Suez, major missions to Cyprus, major missions to the Golan Heights. We no longer have the capacity to do that. We are stretched beyond thin with our current deployments. And as a result, we have very few hard assets in the region. Other democracies are doing the heavy lifting in the region, whether it's patrolling the Gulf, whether it's patrolling other parts of the Middle East, whether it's in the Mediterranean. It's other democracies that have hard assets in the region and that are doing the heavy lifting. And they are not making these declaratory recognitions of Palestinian statehood. And so by this committee encouraging the government to do the same, to recognize sooner rather than later Palestinian statehood, we risk damaging Canada's interests and further diminishing our presence on the world stage. And we cannot support that for that reason. Canada needs to be hard-nosed about its interests. Too often, we are not, and as a result, Canadians have suffered. And so we strongly oppose this motion. We think it's illogical. it's also in a context where it would reward violence and illegal activity on behalf of non-state actors to achieve statehood. And we think that sends the wrong message about the rules-based international order. And for those reasons and the others I've outlined during this committee meeting, Mr. Chair, I will be voting against the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chong. Now we go to Dr. Fry.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've heard some very eloquent speeches this morning. I refer to Ms. McPherson, Mr. Bergeron. I refer to Mr. Algarba, and I think one of the things that we must remember, we talked a lot about history around this table as we debated the motion. I recall that historically, I know that when I was a minister in this government, and when those of you around the table who say you are conservatives, I recall Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, Canada was a player on the world stage, not because we had a lot of arms, not because we were massive armies, not because of anything other than the power of our conviction, our sense of fairness, our ability to find answers to complex solutions, and to go about making that happen. When Brian Mulroney came about helping to create the end of apartheid in South Africa, he went against the G7 nations. He went against the United Kingdom. He went against so many people, but he spoke out because Canada, whether it be under a progressive conservative government or a liberal government, has always had that ability to be recognized for its ability to speak truth, for its ability to find solutions, for its ability to get to peace. This is our seminal role in the world, to be a peaceful nation, a peace-loving nation, a nation that seeks to find peace. You cannot find peace unless you have a two-state solution. There can be no permanent path to peace other than that. Now, everyone around the table agrees with this. What this motion is asking us to do, and I just want to talk about, that old aphorism about evil exists where good people do nothing. I substitute the word people for men in this gender-sensitive age. I think that one has to move forward. To be able to, democracy, we had a lot of talk about democracies here. Canada is a democracy, a true democracy. A democracy includes the voice of civil society. If we're going to ask for a study to occur, we are engaging civil society in asking their opinions. We're engaging civil society in Canada in debating an issue that very few people even understand, the historic background for it, the problems, and the course that it can lead to. So I think that this is a very democratic thing to do. This is what standing committees are supposed to do. And people say if the government of Canada wants to do it, they can go ahead and do it. I think that is very true. But at the same time, while this is happening and everyone is standing and sitting on their hands, more and more civilians are being killed, children especially in Gaza. We stand up and we scream when this happens in Russia. We stand up and we shout loudly about what's going on with Ukrainians. But we have to believe that all human beings are equal. All human beings, all children, all families can hurt in the same way. So we either believe in the rule of law that says that there's a law around conflict, and with regard to civilians, we either agree with that or we don't. We do agree with that. We've always agreed with that. We've always stood for that. So this is saying that we're really trying to find out how to get to that two-state solution that would lead to lasting peace. We're doing it in the face of the fact that we have just heard Norway last night, and I must tell you, I watched the Taoiseach, the Prime Minister of Norway, speak, and I was moved. He talked about principle. He talked about fairness. He talked about standing up and speaking out. This is what Canada has been renowned for, not for having the largest number of forces in NATO, not for having the biggest number of armies, but always, I remember when North Korea was having its problems. Who did they send? They sent a Canadian diplomat. We've seen in Northern Ireland, whom did they send? They sent a Canadian general. We've always been out there whenever we're looking for solutions to conflict. This is our history. This is our legacy. This is who we are as Canadians. We are now going to the people and to civil society writ large, whether it be academics or experts or whomever. We're going to civil society and saying, look, we all know this is what we say we agree with. Everyone around this table agrees with the two-state solution. So now we want to know, there's a problem getting there. Mr. Netanyahu has said that he does not recognize and will never recognize the state of Palestine. Okay, so where do you go from there? There's going to be no negotiated settlement. So if we have to push that envelope, like Mr. Mulroney did in South Africa, where he pushed the South African government of the day to decide on what was going to happen with apartheid and to back down. This is something that we are going to be following the Canadian tradition in doing. So I think this is an important motion. Nobody knows how the outcome, as Mr. Alghabra said, what the outcome will be. We may hear from a lot of experts in civil society that we should not have a two-state solution. We should hear from them that we should wait and let things take its course. I remember in the Second World War, do all of you remember when Britain sat by and let Germany say, I only want to march into southern Czechoslovakia. I only want to do this. And of course, then World War II happened. We don't want a regional war right now. There's risk of a regional war in the Middle East. I was in summer. I just wanted to say, I haven't spoken. I'm just speaking this bit right now. So don't everyone stare at me as if you want me to shut up, because I'm not going to. I have the floor. So, look, I was this summer in Bucharest for the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. And there, at that meeting, some of the 57 states were represented by Mediterranean states. And the Mediterranean states were very concerned about the fact that Mr. Netanyahu had said that he was going to go into Lebanon, which is in itself a sovereign nation. They were concerned that this would be the start of a regional war in which they would be part of that war, in which they would be hurt, they would be harmed. They spoke out very clearly about this issue, and these were parliamentarians from 57 nations, about a two-state solution. They spoke out about ending what is going on now. They said, how do we say that Putin is a monster, doing things, taking children, kidnapping them, killing civilians, raping children, and we are not talking about other countries, and we don't apply that same principle to other countries. I'm not blaming anybody. Israel has a right to defend itself. It was absolutely awful what happened in October 7th. But the Israeli people want an end to this. They're walking in the streets by the tens and hundreds of thousands saying, we want this to end, we want a ceasefire, we want the hostages back, we want peace. We want peace. How many generations of Israeli and Palestinian children have grown up not knowing what it is to have hope for what we are talking about here? A house, a safe place to call home, health care, ability to go to school and realize your potential. None of these people have, over the course of the generations, ever had that hope, have always had the dream, which is now no longer a dream. It is a lack of hope. It has died. There's no dream there. This is what we stand for as Canadians. Let us engage our civil society in this study. Let us listen to what they have to tell us. Let us go ahead and make the decisions, even if it means we have to tell our government, this is what we want to do. We heard from civil society, this is what the people want you to do. Let us do that. Or what are we afraid of? What the people will tell us? Are we afraid of the people, our civilians? Thank you very much.
Dr. Fry, now we go to MP McPherson.
Mr. Chair, very quickly, because I have spoken to this at length, I would just say once again that this could be done today by the minister. We don't need a study, but I would ask that this committee undertake this study as soon as possible, that we treat it with the urgent matter in which it deserves. I think we all understand that there is a potential election coming soon. The Conservatives have made it very clear that they will never take this step. I think it's important that we do this as urgently as possible. Thank you.
Absolutely. If memory serves, I do think I saw the term immediately, so that was part of the motion. But there's no longer anyone on the speakers list, so we'll put this to a vote now. Yes.
Just a quick intervention. The wording in the motion as such is that it implies you will be reporting this to the House. at some point because it
Absolutely.
asks for a government response pursuing to Standing Order 109. I want to ensure that we will have the opportunity afforded by this committee to append a dissenting report to that report to the House, indicating our position that Canada and this committee should adhere to the long-standing position of the Government of Canada prior to this current government and the long-standing position of the two major parties in the House of Commons.
Yes, Mr. Chong, that is standard procedure, and I don't think anyone has the intention of departing from that procedure. So before we actually do vote on this, there was the amendment by Mr. Bergeron. If I could just ask the clerk to clarify what that was before we vote on the motion.
I just wanted to clarify whether the amendment proposed by Mr. Bergeron was adopted or not. That was not quite
It was
clear
adopted.
from, it was.
But what was the
Correct.
wording of the amendment?
At most 4 meetings,
At
maximum,
most.
of 4 meetings.
Maximum of 4.
Correct.
Okay.
So the vote now is on the motion as amended.
Yes.
So we go to Mr. Alghabra.
Yes, I'm waiting for the mic to turn on. So yes.
Mr. Oliphant.
Yes, en faveur.
Madame Châtel.
Oui.
Mr. Zuberi.
We.
Dr. Fry.
Yes.
Mr. Chong.
No.
Mr. Hoback.
No.
Mr. Epp.
No.
Mr. Abel-Taif.
No.
Monsieur Bergeron.
Oui.
And Ms. McPherson.
Yes.
So I have 8 yeas and 4 nays.
8 yeas and 4 nays. Thank you for that. Yes, Mr. Oliphant.
I move we adjourn the meeting.
Okay. You unanimously agree to? Excellent. Meeting stands adjourned.
So what are we doing?